Ladies and gentlemen, I want to concur with my brother Weta that indeed the Catholic bishops may have either anticipated this morning's meeting, or indeed they did what has truly been wanting. They spoke their mind. I'd want to challenge the evangelicals and other church leaders to take a clue from what the Catholic bishops have done, and therefore we congratulate them for being so brave, so candid. The statement is clear that this country is sick, in spite of the assurances by Jubilee to the contrary. Our fellow Kenyans, on this occasion, where we take a full and critical look at Jubilee's 3 years in power, I will speak to you on 3 critical areas of education, inclusivity, and elections. One promise by Jubilee, which stands out to date, was to provide solar-powered laptop computers to Standard 1 pupils beginning, as you heard from the President himself, 2014. It was so clear on the date, the start date. And the best he can actually try to explain is that UNESCO are rather sympathetic to Kenya, not to Jubilee. They said, you know, we are rash. We can be able to give you some kind of expert support. But that is up to the President, of course, to tour UNESCO in France. A conception. The project was to provide 1,203,539 laptops to learners and 20,637 for teachers, in addition to 20,637 printers and 20,637 projectors. This has not been achieved to date. And I can tell you, having been Minister for Education for 3.5 years, I speak from a position of knowledge and admittedly, even by our critics, of expertise. The number of laptops to be provided shrouded itself in uncertainty. The plans to procure them keep changing, and the money involved keeps ballooning. As parents, we feel mocked, and I think as Senator Agnazani said, you can do several things to several people, but the worst you can do is to cheat your children. They never forget. And our teachers are a demoralized lot. The relationship between teachers and the government has hit an all-time low in these 3 years of Jubilee. It has been marred by acrimony and mistrust that has crippled learning in our schools. No wonder cheating in national exams hit an all-time high last year. And even may add, you've seen the draconian approach to the top executive of the Kenya National Examinations Council, which I have very strong suspicion on with regard to the tribal slanting. And the Catholic bishops have come out very clear on this. That just because you think one community has kind of been forgotten in the management of Examinations Council, you want to go for them. And you do so in a manner that is even demeaning of the country's constitution itself. When the Minister for Internal Security takes a sledgehammer and orders arrest, he forgets that there's a constitution to which he saw allegiance. And therefore, these are some of the things. When you don't even allow Kenya National Union of Teachers to get their dues from the teachers, what do you expect them to do? And therefore, I have a very strong suspicion personally that this massive cheating last time was an attempt by the demoralized teaching fraternity to teach Jubilee a lesson at a very, very great cost to this country. Well, there's the deferred dream of soccer stadia. Just like the unending nightmare of laptops, the 5-stadia Jubilee promised Kenyans remains just that, a promise. Across the country, youth and other sports enthusiasts are wondering what became of Jubilee's promise to build 5 new stadiums in 5 different counties, nationwide in 5 years. In fact, the president has said that they will make this a business so that there will be Kenyans who will be able to benefit from this emerging and tremendous sporting industry. What is there? We are not even able to come up with the anti-doping legislation. And the president has to go begging on his knees for this country not be punished. This is most certainly a broken promise. Sports Kenya recently announces that the government would not build the 5 stadiums it had promised and would instead construct only 3. Let me come to the very important matter as we look forward to next year: elections and election management. The past 2 electoral cycles have fallen short of democratic standards, thereby subverting the free will of the Kenyan people. This has either resulted in loss of life, socio-political conflict, and or economic regression. While Kenya had climbed from a 0.9% annual rate of growth in 2002 to 7% in 2007 as a result of the NAC initiatives, the post-election violence dimmed our fortunes to less than 1% economic annual rate growth. It is quite clear that democratic, free and fair elections is good for all Kenyans, and Jubilee should not sabotage the electoral reforms. We need to have free and fair elections. We say they do not need to sabotage, because we have, even yesterday, we went to the IEBC, and there again I want to congratulate the Catholic bishops for coming out so strongly and living up to the biblical expectation the church is the salt of the earth. And if the salt loses its taste, the rest of it is meaningless. The Catholic bishops are so clear that they cannot understand how IEBC can conduct the next election. And we must therefore move from here, specifically and with confidence, to tell IEBC to pack and go home. It is abundantly, let's just say that we cannot have free and fair elections without the reforms that we have actually promised under the Okoa initiative. And Okoa Kenya, as we know, was to be implemented through a referendum as required by the Constitution. And we are all set. And yesterday we wanted actually to ask IEBC, which electoral register were you referring to? It is very clear to us. It is so clear that the threshold of 1 million votes was more than met by the signatures that Okoa Kenya initiative presented. This matter is too key to the future of our nation to be dismissed on partisan political ground. But that is what Jubilee has done. Time is running out on this if we are to avoid the curse of bad elections presided over by incumbents defending their seats. I also want to talk on inclusivity, which will be my last subject this morning to all of us. Inclusivity and national unity. The prevalence of ethnic seclusion in public service affairs constitutes the greatest obstacle to national unity, national cohesion, and indeed sustainable development in Kenya today. The mismanagement of ethnic diversity in governance has adversely affected the quality of public service delivery in our country. This has gotten to levels that have never been matched before in our society. A report by the Public Service Commission of Kenya, published on 4th July 2014, for instance, shows that only 2 communities in the country hold a half of the total public service jobs. And here, we are not talking tribalism. We're talking about inclusivity, which is a constitutional matter. The public service payroll, as at 30th June 2014, shows that out of 236,231 civil servants, the 2 ethnic communities accounted for 115,613, or 46% of the public workforce. Just imagine, 2 communities out of 42 communities, because these are the nationalities that make this country. This indeed is a ticking time bomb, and it has to be addressed if we are indeed if we are going to have to avoid the curse that has befallen many African nations. President Kenyatta has proven incapable of rising to the challenge of the high office he occupies. Jubilee has failed to unite Kenyans, and one of the things he said is unity of Kenyans. Tribal emotions were whipped to extraordinary levels on the basis of misinformation and distortion surrounding the ICC. And I want to say here that a leadership based on tribal bigotry cannot stand. Inclusivity is what Kenyans deserve and look forward to. And CORD, and I want to repeat, only CORD provides this promise. I thank you. I now call on my brother, Prime Minister Raila Amolo Odinga, to make his comments.